Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I'm Rory McLennan coming to you from Glasgow, Scotland. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. Over 100 people are reported dead and hundreds more injured following a tragic incident in Gaza City early on Thursday as Palestinians rushed towards trucks carrying humanitarian aid. While some reports suggest Israeli troops fired on the crowd, the Israeli military contends that most casualties resulted from a stampede. Gaza Health Ministry spokesperson Ashraf al-Qidra described the event as a massacre. However, the Israeli Defense Forces said during the delivery of humanitarian aid, Gazan residents surrounded the trucks, leading to injuries caused by pushing and trampling. They released aerial footage showing hundreds of people climbing onto trucks during the incident. Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres expressed his shock over the incident and stressed the need for an effective independent investigation. Russian President Vladimir Putin warned the West of risking a conflict with nuclear weapons if they sent troops to Ukraine. On Thursday, Mr. Putin said Moscow had the weapons to strike targets in the West. In his address to lawmakers, he accused the West of seeking to weaken Russia. The threat was made in the annual State of the Union address. The Russian president also talked about stationing more troops on Russia's western border with Finland and Sweden. His warning comes after French President Emmanuel Macron refused to rule out the possibility of the West sending troops to Ukraine, though that suggestion was rejected by the United States and by Germany. War-torn Ukraine has shipped more than 7,000 tons of wheat to feed the hungry in Sudan. On Wednesday, the United Nations World Food Programme said the grains would feed 1 million conflict-affected people in Sudan for a month. The donation forms a part of a humanitarian initiative named Grain from Ukraine, launched by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The grains that arrived at the coastal city of Port Sudan were loaded onto trucks for distribution. The World Food Programme Director in Sudan, Eddie Rowe, described the humanitarian situation in the country as catastrophic, adding that action must be quick. Food insecurity has been soaring high due to the almost 10-month-long fight between rival military forces in Sudan. As part of the 55th session of the Human Rights Council, the Holy See's permanent observer to the United Nations in Geneva emphasised the need for redoubled global efforts to combat human rights breaches, especially those concerning religious freedom. Archbishop Ettore Balestrero emphasised the grave degree of worldwide discrimination and persecution of Christians, citing statistics indicating violations in roughly 1/3 of the world's nations. He also underlined the relevance of human dignity in global cooperation and in the development of artificial intelligence. The Archbishop also cautioned against the creation of so-called new rights that harm human dignity and fraternity, emphasising the need for universal brotherhood and realising proper human rights. Archbishop Balestrero stated that interconnectedness is necessary for a peaceful and unified world. The Alabama House approved a bill on Thursday granting immunity to in vitro fertilization providers in cases of death or injury to unborn babies during the IVF process. The bill passed a week after the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that unborn babies conceived through IVF are human children protected under the state's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act, thus bypassing the court's interpretation of the act. IVF is a fertility treatment where doctors fuse sperm and eggs to create human embryos for implantation in the mother's womb. Embryos intended for later implantation are frozen, while others are destroyed or used for research. The Catholic Church strongly opposes IVF due to its destruction of human life and the separation of the Marriage Act from procreation. The bill will now advance to the Alabama Senate for further consideration. At least 24 migrants have been killed off the northern coast of Senegal, with many others injured after their boat capsized. The boat was en route to Europe when it overturned near the town of San Luis. Walking Borders, a Spanish migration advocacy organisation, said the exodus of migrants departing from Senegal on fragile wooden vessels saw a significant increase last year, with nearly 1,000 dying in the first half of the year while trying to make the perilous journey to Spain by sea. Senegal and Morocco are the primary countries of origin for migrants who arrive in Spain. Of the more than 600 migrants who died or went missing trying to reach Spain last year, the vast majority were lost on the treacherous Atlantic route. A team of human rights experts appointed by the United Nations has issued a damning report accusing Nicaragua's government of committing human rights violations that amount to crimes against humanity. The report, released on Thursday, specifically calls for President Daniel Ortega and his wife, Vice President Rosario Murillo, to be held accountable by the international community for their roles in these widespread abuses. The 78-year-old Ortega has governed Nicaragua since 2007, winning 3 successive re-elections and tightening his grip on key state institutions. The report states that he and his wife now have total control over the judicial branch. The UN experts say the Nicaraguan government has been engaged in serious and systematic human rights violations for political reasons, with acts such as torture, extrajudicial executions, and arbitrary detentions occurring since the 2018 political crisis. The Nicaraguan government, however, has not responded to the report's findings. The Holy See has released information about Pope Francis's March liturgical celebrations, which include events for Holy Week and Easter Sunday. The schedule includes the Palm Sunday Mass in St. Peter's Square on March the 24th, the Chrism Mass on Holy Thursday, and the Good Friday Passion of the Lord ceremony in St. Peter's Basilica. That evening at the Colosseum, the Pope will lead the Via Crucis. The Easter Vigil Mass and the Easter Sunday Mass will be celebrated in St. Peter's Basilica. Finally, on Easter Sunday, the Pope will give the customary Urbi et Orbi benediction. In a report on assisted suicide, the UK's Health and Social Care Committee emphasised the value of high-quality end-of-life care over euthanasia. The research called for universal coverage with more specialists and pain relief options, emphasising the need for increased access to palliative care in the United Kingdom. Responses to the inquiry numbered over 68,000, with advocacy group Christian Concern among those submitting letters opposing assisted suicide. CEO Andrea Williams emphasised the need to give palliative care top priority to provide a secure and compassionate environment for those needing the end of their lives. Furthermore, the Christian group stressed the value of life and the need to foster a culture of caring over a culture of death, warning that legalising euthanasia might result in non-voluntary euthanasia and the exploitation of human life. Dozens of priests have protested a measure implemented by Argentinian President Javier Milei's administration to cut funds for public works in poor neighbourhoods and slums in the country. The share of tax collected on foreign currency purchases directed towards slum developments was reduced to 0.3% in the decree enacted on February the 23rd by the Milei government. The administration suspected irregularities and the misuse of funds for such projects. However, in a public letter released by the ecclesial ministry Curas Villeros, the priests emphasised that funds were directed to improving the poorest of slums by providing better access to sanitation, water, electricity, schools, and community centres. They also voiced their opposition to President Milei's economically libertarian ideology and his intent to reduce the state's participation in Argentina's economy and society. Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Bisungu of Kinshasa has accused the Democratic Republic of the Congo's neighbouring countries of collaborating with multinationals and engaging in what he called the shameless predation of the country's natural resources. In a homily given in the last week, the Cardinal said the fundamental interests of several armed militias and their sponsors were meant to distract people and steal the country's mineral wealth. He also expressed concerns that the country's mineral resource has become its curse, with large portions of the country becoming engulfed in violence as various actors vie for control of natural resources. The DRC is home to an estimated $24 trillion worth of untapped raw minerals, with large reservoirs of lithium and cobalt. In spite of this, it has remained chronically poor. Bishops of North and South America met in Tampa in Florida for collegial reflection dedicated to prayer, fraternity, listening, and dialogue. The bishops from the leadership of the Latin American Episcopal Council, the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, and the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops participated in the gathering that took place from February the 26th to the 28th. Following the meeting, the prelates wrote to Pope Francis, describing the possibilities of joint initiatives explored during the conference. During the three-day summit, the bishops discussed their concerns and approaches to issues including euthanasia, migration, ecological threats, and the Synod on Synodality. In a joint statement issued after the meeting, the prelates said their time together strengthened their bonds of fraternity in Christ and allowed them to discern ways in which they can promote a more synodal and missionary church. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us again next time for more. And do remember, in the meantime, you can always visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.